CAS Newton is a science-smart agentic AI built directly into SciFinder. It's designed by scientists at CAS to understand scientific questions and information, helping you explore complex research workflows. This environment allows you to iterate through a conversational interaction with the system. This permits flexible approaches to search and provides insightful analysis in a detailed response. So, unlike general AI tools, Newton leverages curated data from the CAS content collection, and it applies domain specific reasoning and always cites trusted scientific literature. As an agentic AI, this is different from foundational large language models. It employs an LLM as the mechanism through which you interact with Newton, but the real magic happens beneath the surface. The agent coordinates tasks, acting as an orchestrator to access proprietary CAS content and tools. Now, Newton's access to CAS content is so important because it means the system is working with high quality data. Not only is it comprehensive data, but it's also highly cleaned and harmonized. And that's because CAS extracts and transforms it from trusted primary sources. It's the same quality data that makes SciFinder such a fantastic solution for your information needs. It's using the same CAS processes that we employ for curating and transforming the data. And that's what results in these highly structured databases that Newton will access as well. Furthermore, Newton employs proprietary CAS tool sets and algorithms to perform the search and analysis of the CAS content collection. These are mechanisms that enable the agentic system to properly search and analyze the excellent content in our databases. Finally, Newton is guided by detailed instructions written by CAS scientists. These instructions dictate how Newton should behave, ensuring that it performs quality searches and provides scientifically meaningful responses to you. So let's take a closer look at this first example that is on my screen. As you saw when I input my query earlier, I input this prompt asking for recent research on intermediates of easy H2 inhibitors. I told Newton to provide relevant documents and example reaction protocols. So what we see in the response here is that it starts off with an overview and some key recent articles based on the past few years. You might notice right away that it provides links to these sources. All of these links will take you within SciFinder to the SciFinder bibliographic record. And then, of course, you're just one other click away from the primary literature. Going back to our response, we can scroll past some of these examples and see that this breakdown from Newton is giving me key synthetic chemistry papers and then some deeper insights from within those papers. Now, this is context dependent or context aware. So the response is not only going to be an insight from that paper or collection of articles, but it's also going to be in the context of the question that I asked. Scrolling a little bit further, not only do we see that this gives us access to journal articles or non-patent documentation, but we also have access to the patent literature as well. Just like in SciFinder, you have access to the global scientific patent literature. So we see that Newton gave me this response talking about pyran-containing intermediate of an easy H2 inhibitor. Well, that certainly sounds very relevant to my research topic. Let's take a closer look. I click the number there. It takes me to the bibliographic record that exists in SciFinder. Beyond the title and abstract for this Chinese patent, we can explore a little bit more information. For example, this patent has our usual CAS concepts and indexed substances. Going back to our bibliographic record here, we also have reaction information. Of course, this reaction information is what informed the details that Newton gave to me. So when Newton described a three-step synthesis that included condensation, reduction, and an amination, this is influenced by the reactions that we see associated with this bibliographic record. Let's continue to look at this example. Scrolling past patents, Newton has provided to us comprehensive result sets found within SciFinder. So you could see it's given to us a complete literature collection, recent synthetic methods, and specific reactions as well from a collection of different publications that have disclosed syntheses. Scrolling down, you'll notice that I provided a second prompt. Provide reactions for the synthesis of the thiophene intermediate. This was a specific intermediate that was mentioned in the earlier response. I asked Newton, how is this done? And it gives to me a breakdown of the synthesis of the thiophene-based inhibitor intermediate. And this is largely based off of this one publication found here. Within this publication, we see there are 86 reactions, and it's disclosing how they synthesize these thiophene-based intermediates. Newton gives me a breakdown according to the step-by-step process, and each step of the way, it's giving me example reaction records sourced from that publication of interest, the asymmetric synthesis of thiophene-based EZH2 inhibitors. We see that through the mechanism of Newton, not only can we search and retrieve quality information, but it's able to delve into the deeper details in those records and produce back to us these meaningful insights, as we see here with this step-by-step synthetic procedure. It also can give us some meaningful comparisons. For example, this publication taught an alternative route via a methyl ester, and it's able to provide to us not only those steps and step-by-step procedures, but further down, we do see that there are key features for this synthesis. For example, we do see one of the key features of this synthesis includes an enantioselective step. Let's click into this. We have our usual experimental protocols and our step-by-step procedure, as well as characterization data. Now, we will move on to another example, but before I do that, I would like to invite my colleague Paul Peters to ask any questions or comment upon this example. Paul?
Mike, this is a great first example of how CAS Newton can be an excellent research assistant. I wanted to look at this particular protocol that you have brought up for this synthesis, because there is quite some information here. If we look at this procedure, then we can, for instance, see that they try to purify the residue using column chromatography. That's not something that everybody would really like to have, but within SciFinder itself, there isn't really a way how to take this out. And the other thing that I saw was we see that in the reaction notes in this yellow section below, that there is a percent EE, enantiomeric excess mentioned, which is also not easy to filter out when you have, let's say, a larger answer set. And the same may be true for the fact that, there's a carbon-13 NMR measured for the product as the characterization data. Would actually CAS Newton be able to focus on these pieces of information to say, I don't want to have reactions where the final step of the procedure is a chromatographic purification, or I would like to have those types of reactions where there is a percent EE mentioned. Do you think that that's a possibility?
Yes, Paul, you're absolutely right. Newton can access details from the record that are not easily searchable or analyzed through traditional approaches. So this type of information is in the records, like the one on my screen, and our databases. So Newton can work with it. Newton is able to rapidly read through the records and modify the retrieval and response accordingly. So, for example, let's give this a go. I'll say column purification is not ideal for the asymmetric hydrogenation. hydrogenation. Please provide suggestions for an alternative. Okay, so we have a response here from my follow-up question where it does recognize that column chromatography is not necessarily ideal, especially for a large-scale approach. And it does give some suggestions. For example, it cites a patent here where a different inhibitor was synthesized, and they took an approach where they formed a chiral acid salt using tartaric acid, and then they recrystallized it. So scrolling down past some of the other examples, some of which may or may not work for us, you could see it then provides a recommended approach in the context of what I asked and suggested that we perform the hydrogenation as described in the previous step for our EE value. And then it recommends that we remove the protecting groups, form a salt, and crystallize it from there. And of course, it then gives some advantages to this, explaining how it believes it to be scalable, cost effective, and not require any chromatography. So with that, I think we can move on to a second example, and let's take a look at something a little bit different. Okay, I've called up a second example for us to look at today. In this example, I'm particularly interested in next generation refrigerants. Next generation refrigerants are typically hydrofluoroolefins. So in this example, I wanted to start with a broad search just to understand what hydrofluoroolefins are present within the CAS registry system. In this instance, it's given to me a highly relevant result set, starting a little bit broad to begin with nearly 2 million substances that could be loosely interpreted as hydrofluoroolefins. Of course, when we look at these by relevance ranking, we could see at a glance that there are many in here that are of high relevance to my question at hand. Of course, we could take this over and explore it manually, but in Newton, we have the opportunity to explore a little bit further. Now, as before, we see that Newton has provided us with some key highlights or key examples, calling out for us some hydrofluoroolefins that are of particular note. But of course, I have not yet given it the context that I am interested in next generation refrigerants. So in this particular example, we might see that some of these substances could be used as a refrigerant, or there might be some other application. So scrolling down a little bit, naturally, I ask, well, which of these substances have been reported as potential next generation refrigerants with a low global warming potential? Looking at this, it's given me a much more precise result set in that it's able to narrow down those substances to low GWP refrigerants. So, how does it know that these substances are low GWP refrigerants? Well, what you can imagine it has likely done here is some process where it took the 2 million substances retrieved previously and then crossed over and found the associated literature and patents and other documents, quickly analyzed the context of the substances in those documents to identify which of them have been linked with that particular use. And then it has come back to me and given that specific list of documents as seen here. Now, it of course provides some key findings from the literature. For example, it took notes that there's one particular document here which seems to be doing a comparison of 62 candidate fluids. We take a look at this. And we can see that indeed this is an article published in Elsevier, which seems to be doing an analysis of different refrigerants for low GWP purposes. And as we would expect, this is indexed with CAS registry numbers, including many of our hydrofluoroolefins, as well as some of the more traditional HFCs. Now, finally, what I like about this example is I have a particular fondness for intellectual property. So I like to ask, are there any HFOs that are of recent focus in patents since 2024? Looking at our response here, it gives me an analysis with 276 recent patents on HFO refrigerants. And it's calling out for me which of these substances are of greatest abundance within the published patents. And scrolling through here, we can again see the specific substances with links to their registry numbers, but we also see that it's calling out specific patents for us. For example, these patents from Chemours talking about different blends of HFOs. And yeah, let's access this one here from Chemours. We see our bibliographic patent record. So, of course, this includes title and abstract. And scrolling down, we have our patent family. We, of course, have our usual information, such as the indexed concepts, which, again, is searched by Newton, as well as our indexed substances. Now, of course, because we are now in the more manual navigation in the bibliographic record, I have the capacity to open up this patent record via the patent pack link, where I can learn more about the HFOs that Newton found and the blends that it described for me. I can see that it is indeed talking about compositions comprising these various HFOs or HFCs, and we have links to those specific registry numbers where we can learn more about them if we want to, and of course, explore further about this patent record. So, as I mentioned previously, something that I really enjoy about Newton that I think is of great value to you is that you have the capacity for human in the loop. Now, there's human in the loop on the user end, wherein we can interact with Newton and at any point manually interact with specific documents, substances, reactions, or just result sets. But also remember, there's human in the loop at the back end when we build the databases supporting SciFinder and Newton. So that leads to these high quality responses and very detailed insights that you get from global patent literature, which you wouldn't otherwise find very well through generic LLMs. And as I've shown you previously, we do have access to journal articles, regardless of whether they are open access or behind a subscription. So before I continue, I would like to just ask Paul if he has any specific comments around this example that I have shown you here. Paul?
This is another great example looking at how we can use substance information and then their role as refrigerants. You've been focusing on the patent side of these hydrofluoroolefins, but what if I'm more in an academic environment? I know people who want to have a clear idea of a new research area may want to find the most suitable review article to get started. Is there a way in CS Newton to also say, what is a very recent and a very highly respected review article on a particular topic to kind of get a good start on the particular subject area, maybe compare that a little bit to the information that we see Newton analyze for us here?
Yeah, Paul, good point. I do have more of a patent focus, but of course, we could take a more academic approach here, either by browsing the journal articles or specifically review articles. So I'll just copy and paste in a prompt here to continue my conversation with Newton and ask it to find recent and popular review articles on HFO refrigerants. Now, it is worth noting that in SciFinder, we don't currently have anything around an impact factor. However, without a specific impact factor, of course, we can still ask Newton to look for articles of recency, or just those that are perhaps cited the most or in publications that are tending to publish a lot in this area. And so, yes, we're able to do this. It's found for us some popular review articles. Here we have an article published in Energy, and it has given us a comprehensive overview of different refrigerants, including their characteristics, their properties, and their decomposition mechanisms. So, yes, Paul, it is possible, of course, to explore other document types within SciFinder using Newton. So that's the last of my examples. And at this point, I'm going to hand it over to you, Paul, so you can try a couple other examples to share with our audience. So over to you. Thanks.
So let's look at a query where we would use also a structure as part of the intended query. So let's draw the structure. I can enter a name, glycerin, to get that particular part of the structure, and then I would like to modify one of the oxygens into a nitrogen, and then I would like to have two alkyl groups that are positioned here. So that's my structure, and I could then indicate I am interested in the attached structure where the two alkyl groups have at least 6 carbon atoms. So in that way, I have provided some additional information that's maybe not easily included in the structure definition, but certainly we can run that particular search. Great, we got an answer back from CAS Newton. Summary, I found 4,218 substances with alkyl chains of more than 6 carbons, matching your structure where that is the case. And we see that we have a couple of examples here, symmetrical dialkyl compounds with 2 carbon, C8, 2 C10, 2 C12, then also some quaternary ammonium salts. So that is also a nice possibility. Collection includes various lengths, etc. So if we would look at the link that we've been provided, so we see that we have those results. We can take a further look at that. We can also sort it maybe a little bit differently to see what kind of impacted substances we have. And we see that we get some cyclic substances as well. So we didn't quite lock down the structure, but I can go back to Newton and simply say, please remove the cyclic compounds from the results. And we got our results back. We have significantly fewer answers. So here we have our acyclic substances with our matching carbon chains, and we still have our mainly symmetrical compounds. But I would really be interested if there are examples. Are there examples of asymmetrical alkyl groups? So meaning that they would have different alkyl chains on the nitrogen. So let's have a look. Yes, and they are present. So that is a very nice option. We see here we got the nonyl octyl amino C9C8, 14,8, 14 and 12, 16 and 8. So it gave still my 1900 answers, which contain both symmetric and asymmetric combinations, but I got directly some very nice examples of these substances that would have the asymmetrical structure. And I can also see that there are links provided to these compounds. So if I want to see maybe a synthesis or something like that, I can go back to SciFinder and see, oh, we got indeed just one reference to these compounds and be able to see kind of where that literature reference comes from. See that this was found in a Chinese patent. And then, of course, I can still look for those cases. I don't know, have any of these substances been used as Gemini surfactants? And we have indeed our result set. They have been used indeed as Gemini surfactants. And here we have some literature references of those that we would have. So yeah, those have been identified, and we also see the literature references from a variety of time periods that have been there, and we see some further documented applications of these compounds. So indeed, these are indeed well-established Gemini surfactant scaffolds with documented advantages over conventional single-chain surfactants, and that was kind of the intention of our search. So we've clearly seen that it is possible to use structural elements and text elements and further details about these compounds that we'll be able to use. Mike, any particular comments from you on this example?
Hi, Paul. Yeah, just a quick comment here. I just think it's really interesting that you can simultaneously search chemical structures with the text-based Newton prompt. So, of course, those structures are using our registry substance database. It's not just an image match, but it's actually breaking down that structure into a structure connection table and matching that to the records we have in the database. And also, I really enjoyed that in your example, we can see that you are enabled to specify structural aspects that would have otherwise been challenging to find. So I very much like that you can quickly and easily achieve a high degree of precision working with Newton. Now, if I could just get you to scroll a little bit higher up again to where you got this last response. Yep, we see that you have there also a couple links where one is specifically for these substances as Gemini surfactants. And then we also have another one that's kind of broader application as surfactants in general. So I really do enjoy that we get to see these sorts of responses where Newton is able to give you a higher degree of precision, but then also offer you some records that are perhaps in a related area. So I'll hand it back to you, Paul, to go into our last example. Thanks.
Good. Time is going quickly, so let's move to our fourth example, which is based on a reaction search. And here we could imagine maybe an academic environment where a student has tried a particular reaction and found that there was something not entirely going well with this particular experiment. So my question here is, my Sonogishira reaction produced a ketone instead of an alkyne. Can you suggest why this is happening? Is this mentioned in the literature? And so CS Newton accessed the CS content collection, mainly focusing on the reaction details, and it had found that indeed the production of the ketone is a well-known side reaction caused by dehydration of the alkyne. And it found some interesting references for that. And it gives then us, based on the abstracts of these publications, it will give us sort of a summary, an overview of why this may be happening, and then also provided indeed some key literature examples. So this is really very useful, and it even provides common causes for this reaction, and also how to prevent it, which is of course very useful if you're trying to avoid the formation of those ketones. We could also ask it to look for alternative reactions. So can you suggest alternative reactions to prepare an alkyne that are less sensitive to water, the presence of water? And so again, after some thought and some searches, there are some alternatives where we could see a variety of different approaches with their literature references or a link to those particular references or reactions that we can then click on to further follow. We see also Negishi coupling and Stiller coupling. And obviously, if you want to know more about these, we can then see, okay, what are the highest yielding methods using a Stiller coupling to find kind of those approaches there as well. So I know a lot of very useful information and how we can organize our research and our prompts specifically here for CS Newton to find the information that we are looking for. Mike, any comments on this last one?
Yeah, Paul, I think we just keep the screen right here, and I'll just mention that I really like that just a little earlier we saw there were some key advantages of the steel reaction over the Shonegashira for producing alkynes. It specifically noted that the steel reaction is less sensitive to water than the Sonogashira, so it's addressing the problem that you brought up at the beginning of this example. We also see on your screen here some very practical recommendations, such as how to minimize waste and maximize yield. So I think this is just a truly the main difference for Newton, where it is leveraging science smart AI to provide meaningful responses founded on the literature.